Well, my welcome, of course, is not only to Mr. Nixon, but is to you, the faculty. I thank you for being here. Know the many responsibilities that we have, and your presence here is an indication of your commitment to excellence in teaching and your professional development. So this is the first in what we expect to be a series, and we'd like to hear back from you what you think works well and what topics may be of interest to you and what we might do to meet your professional development needs in the future. So thank you very much and participate. Thank you.
So we know that traffic on 95 can be a little hairy and slowed Mr. Nixon down today. He was almost here, and then just as he got near the tunnel, he hit a bottom. But we're happy to have Ron Nixon here. You can see from your program all his many accomplishments.
It's scary.
I'm sure you've seen this all before, but he currently is a correspondent in the Washington Bureau of the New York Times. And I have known him professionally for several years now, and am just excited to have him here because he is a wonderful thinker, idea person, but he also has the skills to really mine data and use research tools, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to look at ways that we can introduce that to our students a little earlier in the process and maybe use it ourselves for our own research purposes and writing purposes. And so he very graciously agreed to come, and I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to turn it over to Ron.
Thank you. Well, again, good morning, and want to just once more apologize for being tardy, but you know, said you absolutely positively have to be somewhere. Don't take 95. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things here, and that one is, and like I do this presentation called Beyond Google, but I'm also going to talk about web and technology tools. So we're going to talk about web tools, but I'm also going to talk about something that you've probably heard the term data journalism or computer-assisted reporting or data-based journalism. It has all these different names, but it's not new, and Nate Silver didn't invent it. It's not a dig at Nate Silver. I love Nate. Or Ezra Klein or any of those guys who are doing these digital startups now. Computer-assisted reporting or data-based journalism actually goes back to 1953 when CBS used a computer to predict the, not 53, 50, Eisenhower was elected in 56, right? 52, right. So CBS used a computer to predict the outcome of the race, which had Eisenhower winning in a landslide. CBS didn't believe it, so they tweaked the numbers to show it much closer. The computer was right, and it was off by 2 electoral votes. So that was kind of the start of it, and it has advanced beyond that, particularly with the web now. So what I wanted to do, one other thing I want to add to, I hate PowerPoint, I really do. I hate PowerPoint because I think it's distracting, but you got to do something. So I put this thing together, and I'm going to talk about a couple of things and then show you some practical examples of how I've actually used these tools. Feel free to jump in at any time and ask questions. I don't like standing and lecturing. I'd rather have more interactive thing. If we could briefly just introduce yourselves, because you know who I am, but I don't know who you are. So if you could start here.
I'm Denise Cabrera, teacher the fundamentals of writing and editing.
Okay. Okay, great to meet you.
I'm Karen Hooper, and this semester I'm teaching print news reporting, an internship class in a magazine and feature writing class.
I'm Rod Carbeth, I'm the Director of Graduate Studies here. We have a new master's program in knowledge-based journalism.
Okay.
I'm Baruti Kopano, the chair of the multi-platform production department.
Okay.
I'm Jerry Van Rea, teacher of the multi-platform production department, and teach video production.
You look familiar. I don't know why, but you look familiar.
Video production and
Okay.
position writing.
Okay. And Jack Avery.
Chair of the Department of Media.
Okay. So welcome.
recommend means school. David Barney, I teach public relations writing and public relations campaigns.
Okay.
Lamont Summers, I'm one of the two lawyers on the faculty here, teaching multimedia journalism department, teaching communication law and ethics, introductory media culture, media literacy class, all the way up to graduate class.
Okay. I won't say anything illegal.
I'm Milton Kent. I teach fundamentals of media writing as well as sports writing and editorial and critical writing.
Okay.
I'm Lorraine Brown. I'm married to and I'm a veteran reporter who is switching to copy editing as of Monday.
Oh.
And you've never heard this talk before.
Right? I
Oh,
have heard
really?
this. I've done this from out of town. Honey, I don't think I've heard this in my life. Yeah, okay. First time, well, here I am. But the second time, well, this is the first one, so.
Okay.
Excuse me, Ron, are you really willing to share your PowerPoint with us?
Oh, sure. I mean, if you want it, I'd be more than happy to give it to you. It's not much, it's bare bones, but sure. And I have some other documents which I'm going to email to Jackie that she will share as well. And these are sort of handouts about, it's more about using Twitter, which I found very useful. And with that being said, we jump right into, you guys are all familiar with these tools, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. The four big ones. And we use them all the time, but I don't think that people have mastered using them as reporting tools. And they are very valuable. There are some problems that you encounter as with anything. I'm always struck when I teach this, people will say, yeah, but there's some problems with that. And I say, yeah, but there are problems with like numbers too. There's problems with people that you talk to, right? Because people lie, right? Well, maybe not in Washington, but they do lie, right? Because they always tell the truth when they're talking about Washington. But, and as...
Or at least as how they see it.
Exactly. And as Mark Twain once said, that, figures don't lie, but liars can figure. Right? So even with the numbers, you have those. I have used all of these for various either investigations or enterprise pieces at the Times and other places as well. And I'm going to talk more practical about how I've done this. And I'll bring up this particular one. It was one of those stories that I just didn't really want to do, but was kind of forced to do it because one of the editors on the national desk is a friend, and she asked me to do this thing about this big report that came out about Korean adoptees. It's the country that the U.S. has had the longest relationship in terms of adoptees. And so, it was a report, and who wants to do a story about a report? And plus, I was down in New Orleans. I was going to go hang out with my daughter at Xavier, and I got to do this thing. So I thought, well, why don't I just have some people in this that can illustrate what's going to be in it. So I reached out on Facebook, and I reached out through a group of people, of transracial adoptees that I know in my hometown of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and because there's Minneapolis, Kansas too, just in case. So I'm not from the Kansas one, I'm from the Minnesota one. And I got all these responses, got these really great responses. She started reaching out through people on Facebook, and especially this woman here, Kim Neat, who she was just telling me about how when she was adopted, she always thought of herself as white because she was adopted as such a young child. She never dated Asian men. When her father brought home books from Korea, she wouldn't look at them. And she just always thought she was white. And so there were a number of people like that I interviewed, and we ended up getting all of this stuff from them. But all of that stuff was coordinated just by using Facebook. And because I couldn't just call people because I didn't know anybody. And this was the quickest and fastest way to do it. Plus, it then let me get into the report and tell the big picture, and then come back with these more specific examples of like this woman here who was from Minnesota. She was adopted when she was 7. There was another guy who I thought his story was really interesting, who he was adopted, was given up for adoption, went back to Korea, and met his grandmother, who had actually given him up for adoption. But she sort of went off on him because he couldn't speak the language. And he's like, well, you're the person that gave me up for adoption, so I'm supposed to speak it. So it was just a really weird thing here. So, and in terms of LinkedIn, Barry Meyer and I did this thing about, and let me say before this, I'm not picking on Reverend Young, just Reverend Young, I'm not picking on him. But Andy Young, as everybody knows Andy Young's history, but he runs this thing called the African Enterprise Development Fund, that he convinced Bill Clinton to start to invest money into businesses throughout Southern Africa. They kind of count Southern Africa weird because they include Tanzania in Southern Africa, which is not, but anyway, they count it. So all of this money was put into this fund, and it's basically kind of a publicly funded hedge fund that they put all this money into different businesses it started right after apartheid. So it's a really good idea. That was done through the United States Agency for International Development. And, but the program is collapsing because of mismanagement. There was a guy in Tanzania who was in charge of loaning people money, who loaned someone money for a hotel and then allowed that person to then remove funds from the accounts of the agency, and then it's just a mess, and it's collapsing. And so we did this story about it, and they wrote his attorneys wrote these letters to us, threatening to sue me in particular, because he said I had harassed him when he was going to visit his sick mother. Did you? I did. I mean, my hometown is Minneapolis, Minnesota, but I was born in a little town called York, Alabama. And I finished high school in Alabama. I'm a Southern boy. You know, I don't bother people like that. So, you know, that's just not me. So in one of the letters, they said that we had gotten all of this information from a guy who was a disgruntled employee who used to head the thing in South Africa. The only problem with that is I'd never heard of this guy until they told us about this guy. So then I used LinkedIn to track him down. And I tracked him down to Atlanta. And then it turned out that this guy's wife was from Minnesota, and her mother was like the first black woman to be elected to the legislature there. And then I tracked a number of other people down. There was a woman who had quit before all of the problems started, and I tracked her down to Botswana, again using LinkedIn. Doing name searches, and then there's some more specific searches that you can do. And because with the Times, we have a LinkedIn Pro subscription that lets you do a little bit more stuff. But even, I found most of this just using the basic searches with LinkedIn. So it's a great tool for finding stuff, and it really helps us identify all these people because, again, we had no idea these people existed until they mentioned them in the letter where they threatened to sue us.
When you use LinkedIn, you use a premium service? And why did you have to pay for it?
I do have the premium service, but most of the stuff that I found, tracking on people down, that was just a basic thing that you can get.
When you did on the other story with the Facebook,
Yes.
did you do a search like at groups?
I didn't do
keywords.
For that, I didn't do a search. I actually put out a request for people to talk. And because it was somewhat of a competitive story, I had a friend of mine put the request out so he would contact her and then she would forward them to me. And and one of the things I travel up to the mothership in New York quite a bit, and usually take Amtrak. And I notice, like most people, that the wireless on the train is really, really bad. You know, to the point where you almost expect to hear that little AOL sound when you log in. And so, you know, I was talking to the bureau chief at the time, David Leonhardt, and he was like, yeah, that should be a fun story. Let's just do that. Why is the wireless on it's so bad? And so we decided that we were going to do it, but we wanted to talk to people about their experience here. So went on Twitter and I did some searching. I tracked down Questlove, who had tweeted something about how bad the internet on the train was. A guy who worked in the Bush administration, who's in the article here, tracked him down. And actually, this woman here who said that, you know, she was, you almost expect to hear the sound that AOL used to make when you logged in.
Yeah.
I tracked her down. She was a graphic artist, and I tracked her down using Twitter as well.
How did you tweet?
What?
Yeah,
I did keyword searches like Wi-Fi and Amtrak.
Okay.
And then it gave me a list of people, and then I looked at the little bio information on there. And for her, it took me to a blog of hers. And so then I sent her an email, and she was out of the country at the time, so then we got on Skype and talked, and I interviewed her through that. Another lady worked at the public library in New York, and someone else was the Bush administration guy. He was at a PR firm, which I did use LinkedIn to track him down. And so it was just you know, a number of the tools. I also use Facebook to get people to talk about their experience on this. And it was just you know, I typically don't do like these kinds of stories, but it was fun, and you know, I got to ride the train.
Do you find that people are receptive to your inquiries once you touch base with them?
Yes, they are. And, you know, they're a little freaked out. Like this woman, she then tweeted, hey, the New York Times just called me. Like, just to everybody. Okay, luckily I wasn't working on a competitive story with okay, I'm sorry. So, going through. So one other thing that I want to show here, a couple of other things, like now to kind of the stuff that I do more enterprise. Sorry, I have this beat called regulatory policy because I think media overall, we do a good job in covering Congress and the White House and DOJ and DOD and all, but nobody covers USAID. Nobody covers Small Business Administration. Nobody covers all these little agencies that have billions of dollars. And the biggest one that we almost never cover, nobody has full-time people covering, is the Department of Agriculture. It's the fourth largest budget in the government. And it's in everything from international food aid to rural development to whatever you could possibly think of. They run the food stamp program, you know, they run the school lunch program, but nobody has full-time people covering. So back in 2011, remember everybody was talking about the deficit, debt ceiling, and all that stuff. And so what I wanted to do was to look at, I did a series of stories about programs that just won't die because Republicans and Democrats hate them, and Republicans and Democrats love them. And one of those programs is this thing called the Market Access Program. The Market Access Program goes back to 70s. And what it is, they give money to, now they give money to these agricultural trade groups to help them advertise their products abroad. So what's a big one that I didn't even know was a Welch's. I had no idea Welch's was a farmer cooperative. I thought it was just a big company. And Blue Diamond, the nuts, that my wife has some on the counter at home, I didn't know they were a former cooperative, but they make billions of dollars a year. And so this $200 million program that the federal government has at the Department of Agriculture, they give these folks money to advertise their products abroad, which seems strange to me. And what was even stranger was that Reagan tried to kill the program, Bush 1 tried to kill the program, Clinton tried to kill the program, Bush 2 tried to kill the program, Obama has tried to kill the program, and it just won't die. Because you have, and one of the biggest defenders of it is a Republican, Doc Hastings from California. And so I was trying to find a way to really get into, I guess, the absurdity of what these things are. So for some reason, I don't know why, I decided to search YouTube. And I searched YouTube. I looked at the list of all the people who got this money, and one of the biggest grantees was the Cotton Council, the American Cotton Council. And they have this subgroup called the Cotton Council International. So I searched for Cotton Council International because they were the biggest one. And the first thing that popped up on YouTube was a reality show in India. So, yeah. So they have this reality show.
Real Housewives of Cotton.
So they have this reality show in India called Let's Design. And so the aspiring designers, they create these costumes and stuff. And you can see this picture here of this woman. She's like one of the, she was Miss Earth 2010. Hey, you know, somebody's got to represent the Earth, right? And so if your costume wins, then you get to go to Paris or New York, and you know, with the magazines and stuff like this, and it's all courtesy of American taxpayers.
Are there Klingons there?
Yeah, exactly. Vulcans too. And so it's again. So I asked this guy who heads the council, well, why do you need to do this in India? And he said, well, you know, it's to promote cotton, and it's to make sure that people use cotton and promote American cotton abroad. And I said, but the only issue with that is that India is the second largest exporter of cotton. Exporter. India is never going to buy our cotton. They don't need it. They have more cotton than they know what to do with, so they export it. So then he said, well, it's because at some point, don't know when, but at some point in time, the Indian middle class is going to be so large that the local cotton farmers can't keep up with it. So then they'll import our cotton. And because of this program, right, will help them. So anyway, it was just the kinds of things that that this is paid for is a manual for pet owners in Japan on how to cook pet food, a class at a Mexican culinary school to teach aspiring chef how to cook rice from Mexican country, because Mexican rice. Who eats rice in Mexico? And so, you know, it's just all of these different things, and you know, they spent, I forgot how much they spent lobbying to keep this program alive. But again, it all started by searching for YouTube videos. And I do this quite often, especially with politicians. I will search YouTube videos and subscribe to their channels to keep track of what they're saying, because we had, I think it was Congressman Davis from Chicago, from Illinois, when we were doing a story about the Congressional Black Caucus and sort of a shift in support of payday loans. And Congressman Davis been a big critic of payday loans because of the high interest rates that you pay. And then he was a supporter. And so we looked through YouTube stuff, and there was a video of him accepting the Lawmaker of the Year from the payday loan industry on YouTube. So, I subscribe to these politicians and other people's YouTube channels just to keep track of what they are doing and the kinds of things that they say, because as we've seen with the 47% comments, you never know who's watching, right? So, and people that or a certain congressman from Louisiana who was recently in the news. I'm not going to call his name, but so it's really useful to monitor things like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and all of those different social media tools, because they're not just things that we share information with. And to be quite honest, the folks, Zuckerberg and the folks who created Twitter and the folks who created all these other, they didn't do it so that you can hook up with your lost love from high school. They did it because they want to get advertisers connected with your data so they can pitch stuff more specifically to you. But that being said, these things can still be used as really good reporting tools. And as you've seen, there's a number of different things that you can do.
Ron, do you go to these networks when specifically when you're working on a story, or do you do it as a matter of a routine?
I do it as a matter of routine. Just to, when I sit down at my desk in the morning, it's the first thing I do. Even if I'm, not really, I'm never not working on a story, but even if I'm not working on something like immediately, but even sometimes on a daily, which I rarely do dailies, but if there's a daily, I do take that extra step thinking I should just, go ahead and look to see if someone tweeted something. And because a lot of times you'll see someone will tweet something and they'll try to take it back. When remember the controversy over the now president and first lady when they did
Fist bump.
okay. I don't know when it became a fist bump, but we used to call it a lot of things that it was, I don't know, fist bump, we called it daff or whatever.
Right.
So anyway, what's his name? Charles something. He tweeted out, I know you're going to say, my wife hates the term tweeted out. So, this is a joke. He tweeted that, that the Senator Obama and his wife just did a Hezbollah-style fist bump. And so, I didn't know Hezbollah was in the... But, once you tweet it, you can't take it back. And so, it was out there. He tried to delete it, but, there's this thing called screenshots, that, once it's there, it's there. So I'm always on the lookout. And I follow people, too. Even there's this guy at the Department of Agriculture who really does not like me, but, I follow him. And then he follows me, and so, but you don't have to necessarily like the people, but if it's on your beat or something that you cover, then you should follow people on there. Because a lot of times they will say things there before they will say something publicly, like through a press release or something. And so I always monitor these things. Speaking of monitoring things, I did the story in July 2011, and this is when the Tea Party folks first came in. And their platform was about out of control government spending and how this was, what they were coming in to do was to stop that. And so the story that I did was looking at several Tea Party members who had defeated people who brought money back home. Everybody's familiar with earmarks? Okay. So, you know, a lot of the folks that were defeated had earmarked money back home. And so their Tea Party challengers were saying this is a bad idea, this is just awful. Including a guy named Palazzo from southern Mississippi. He represents a district that has shipbuilding. And he defeated Gene Taylor, a conservative Democrat, because he criticized Taylor for bringing all of that money and stuff, saying this is waste. So, but when Palazzo got there, got to Washington, he voted on a bill that cut $150 million from the ship. So conservative bona fides are there, Tea Party stuff, right? Except he sponsored an amendment to put the $150 million back. Which didn't get the kind of news back home, but the vote to cut did, but the amendment didn't get the news back home. And so I just looked at all of these folks who, the congressman now, but Tim Scott, who's now senator here, he and Senator Lindsey Graham threatened to shut down the government if they didn't get money to dredge the harbor in South Carolina. And that's, how much is that? I think it's like $300 million. But, you know, he had run on a campaign of cutting federal spending, but then here you are threatening to shut the government down if you don't get federal spending. And there were other people like Michelle Bachmann in Minnesota, who is not the person that represents my district. She wants to, they want to get this bridge replaced, another bridge here. And the federal government said that, you know, it would violate environmental law and it would damage the ecosystem if they put another bridge there. The other problem with this is this bridge right here. Remember the bridge that fell in Minnesota? Well, it's just down the street, so there already is a new bridge. So they want another new bridge here that costs hundreds of millions of dollars. So anyway, how did I track all of these people with this stuff? Because there are a number of folks who did this. There is a tool called, and I looked at it this morning, and it had, I'll show you a screenshot, because remember that little thing that went out a couple of days ago about security and these websites? This particular website said it's down because it got hit with the security thing. But they're fixing it and it should be back up soon. But it's called Follow That Page. And basically what Follow That Page is it's at followthatpage.org, I believe. And what it does is you go to Follow That Page and you type in the address that you want to, of the page that you wanted to follow, and then you put in your email address. Every time something changes on that page, it'll send you an email, and it'll tell you what changed on that page. So if there's like an email, if there's like a press release that went out, like, so it will then tell you that, well, this is what changed on the page, and you can go directly to that page. So I set up a Follow That Page on all of these lawmakers who had come in specifically talking about cutting government spending, so that when something changed on their page, a press release or a speech or something like that, I immediately got an email. And so over time, I was able to put all of that stuff together and then wrote the story. And I think I may have lost some fans in Mississippi, but you know. So the National Park Service was so as I said, Mr. Palazzo voted with other Republicans to slash millions of dollars from the military budget. But then he added an amendment to put the money back. And then so this is for Ingalls Shipyard, Pascagoula District. He got $10 million to buy some land for the National Guard, $19 million for some ship designs and stuff. And all of these programs were stuff that his predecessor had earmarked money for. So the very things that he had campaigned against, he then did. And so his statement was that I'm glad to be able to assure the long-term viability of our shipbuilding industry and the thousands of craftsmen that build the ships. And that, well, you know, these weren't really earmarks because the Department of Defense would decide how the money would be spent. Whereas Gene Taylor has specifically told the Department of Defense how the money should be spent. You see the difference there?
Crystal clear.
I'm just saying, you know, I take people at their word. So follow that page can be used. I also do it for, when I did stuff on the SBA, I went to their audit page. So whenever there was a new audit that showed up, it would send me an email saying, hey, there's a new audit. It will tell you exactly what changed. It's a very, very useful tool. If you are a reporter, you should be using Follow That Page because you cannot keep track of everything that happens on your beat. You cannot keep track. You cannot go to these websites every day to find out what's happening, but this thing allows you to do that. And it's very useful. Again, if you guys have questions, please jump in. We don't need to wait until the end. I mean, are there any questions so far? Yeah. Yes, no? Okay. Tell you another tool here. This is a tool that's called allwhois.com. And so let me give you some backstory here. Another earmark thing, that when the Republicans came in, right before the 2010 midterm elections, the Democrats knew they were in trouble. They kind of saw the Tea Party stuff rising, so they decided that they were going to do these reforms on earmark reforms because that's one of the big things that the Tea Party hates until they don't. So what the Democrats who were in charge at the time decided was that they were not going to earmark money to private companies. Now, if you were a nonprofit, they would earmark money to you still. But that the corruption, everybody remember Duke Cunningham, right? Duke Cunningham went to prisoner number 5738. And just FYI, I'm just saying that Duke Cunningham, if you're gonna bribe, you probably shouldn't write it on a napkin. I'm just saying. Because those things tend to come back and haunt you. But yeah, he wrote specifically on a napkin the things that he wanted. I would earmark this much and then give me that. And so largely because of that scandal, they then told the recipient of earmarks, we cannot earmark money to private companies. You can only do it to nonprofits. So Marcy Kaptur is a congresswoman from Ohio, and she represents the Toledo region. And for years, she had been earmarking money to this little company in Toledo. And so, right after the announcement was made, she sent them an email saying, I can't earmark money to you guys. You need to set up a nonprofit. Now, for some reason, in a response to us about questions, they forwarded us that email. Don't know why. but they forwarded us anyway. So, because when we had called, we were curious because of this thing. It's called the Great Lakes Research Center. It's a nonprofit that was set up. So as I'm looking through the documents, I see the Great Lake Research Center and this firm have the same address. And then I see, well, they have the same people. Is this thing real? But they were saying, no, you know, this has been around for 2 years. We've always had this thing. So what we did is we decided to test it to see actually if they had done it. And so we did a number of different things, including search through this stuff, and I will show you more of that in a second. But what we also did was search through allwhois.com. And what allwhois.com, it tells you who registered the website. It also tells you when they registered the website. So when we searched through there, we got this information about when the website was created, the phone number, and stuff like that. But the interesting thing is the time when the website was created. So the website was created minutes after she called them to say, you need to set up and the guy who registered the website is the brother of the two women. He's the brother of one of the women who runs it, and the brother-in-law, okay, he's married to one of the women, and so the other is his sister-in-law. So it wasn't a real thing. And then when you went to the website, it was just sort of like a plain website that just said, you know, Great Lakes, and we've been doing this for 2 years or whatever. So Captor had been earmarking money to them, to the Department of Defense to buy these vests that this company made. The issue with that is that DOD never used the vest. So it's millions of dollars a year that the DOD, and because it's in an appropriations bill, that's law. So they had to buy the vest, they just didn't use them. So they would buy them and then, you know, do whatever they did with them, throw them somewhere, just let them sit. But by using allwhois.com, we were able to find out who was behind this site, when they set the site up, how long the site had been there, even phone numbers and contact information, and then the address. And so it's the same address as everything else they set up. So we flew to Toledo and went in and we were talking to them, and we laid all our documents out on the table, and then we were escorted out of the building. And so then we talked to Ms. Captor, and she was like, hey, they met all the requirements of the reform. Yes, they did. And so we just, you know, went through these things, like Jeff Flake, who's now a senator, said, hey, it reminds me of Jurassic Park, Life will find a way, because whenever you try and close, it's like whack-a-mole. You know, you beat one of the moles down and then it pops up later. That's kind of what this means. So we found all of these different companies that have done the same thing, but this one was the most egregious one. That, you know, so again, that's where we got the time from, because we knew specifically the time when they had done that, just by going through all who is.
Did anything happen as a result of this story?
Well, yes and no. It became an issue in Marcy Captor's campaign. Except Marcy Captor's in a pretty Democratic district. And she also had the fortune of running against Joe the Plumber as her challenger. So
She's been in office a really long time. Like, I used to live with everybody knows.
yeah. And so the guy who ran against her the second time, he brought it up, but he had no shot. I mean, it's a Democratic district, and he had no shot. But it did cause an ethics complaint being filed against her in Congress. So, you know, and you know, I like Ms. Captor. She's a very nice lady, and was like Nino Brown says, Never personal.
Never personal.
It's always business.
What's business?
Okay, so, and similar to that, there's something called the Wayback Machine. It's the Wayback Machine. It's actually I'm sorry?
That's what Mr. Peabody had.
Oh, yeah, that's right, that's right. So everybody did have a Wayback Machine.
Is that a tool as well, or is that?
Yes, it is. It's the physical address is actually archive.org. And archive.org, I love it for a number of different reasons. So I'm going to pick a website here that you guys can see this. Is that good? Okay. I'm going to pick a website here. I used to work at Investigative Reporters and Editors, and I was a training director for them. And so I'm going to type in IRE's website. Okay, so I put in IRE's website, and then what you do, you click on Browse History. This is what I love about the Wayback Machine. It archives websites. So you can see that IRE's website goes back to 1996. And if you go and click on 1996 and scroll through, you can see the first appearance of it was November 7th, 1996. And if you click on it, it takes you to the website there. And here you see that Rosemary Armado resigned as executive director of IRE because there was this whole big split of IRE because IRE, some people wanted to move IRE to the University of Maryland, away from Missouri because all the folks on the East Coast said it wasn't close enough to the events of people in the Midwest, and on the West Coast hated that idea, so it caused a big split. So it's one of the reasons. But what I love about this is there's been numerous times where I've had a politician or a company or someone say, I didn't say that. I never had that on my website. Stick their website to archive.org, boom, there it is. And then I'll just print out the press release and say, okay, but this is your press release. You did say that. I was working on a story about a supplement company in Minnesota when I was at the Minneapolis Star Tribune, and the company swore up and down that they had not attributed health benefits to some supplement that they were selling because the Federal Trade Commission is coming in to launch an investigation. So they immediately took down anything on their website that said this. So we just went, stuck it in archive.org, and boom, there it was. Plain as day. It's great for that kind of thing because nothing on the web is ever gone. Nothing. And now, does it get everything on the web? No. But a good bit of the thing, it does. It gets quite a bit. Even some obscure stuff that you would never think. Yes, sir?
Can you demonstrate how to search something on archive.org?
I just did.
Or the archive?
Yeah, so this is, so what I did was I went to archive.org and I put in organization I used to work for, and then you click Browse History, and then it tells you all the years that it's collected that information back, and you click on the earliest one, and it gives you month by month. And then, so November 7th, that is the first appearance of it. And if you click on her resigning as it's not just giving you a screenshot, it's actually downloaded everything that's on that website there. So the press release is still there.
That could be scary. Yeah, you know, it's funny, I'm thinking, I'm in the PR law process all the time. And
Which
so,
is mainly what I use it for.
Yeah.
So people put out press releases saying that, hey,
yeah, well, actually, I'm looking at the client, and I'm able to say to the client, you know, forecast, maybe this issue comes up, crisis comes up, understanding that what we put out there as a client, strategically, we have to be mindful of the fact that it can still be
Right.
So if we have a head start and being able to know, okay, you know what, they're gonna find this. And a good reporter is going to write on this.
Right.
So we have to be mindful of that.
Right.
So yeah.
And here's the thing. I didn't learn about this from journalists. I learned about this from lawyers. Because they look at it they look at it to track down what people have said and then come back and say, no, I didn't say that. And the attorneys will go, well, okay, but you did.
Right.
Companies use this to track each other.
Right, yeah.
Competitive intelligence. Yeah.
That's one of the points I made.
Yeah.
I said here, you can use it as a tool for competitive analysis. We're trying to position your brand. And then when you think of that too, I brought up to my campaign class 2 weeks ago, when Smuckers lost a large market share to Conagra and Hormel.
Right.
And all they had to do was pretty much scan the environment using social media and realize that there was a trend moving away from preserved from processed foods to the more natural, and they already had the product line.
Right.
So all they had to do from a competitive perspective, how do you lose Smuckers and you lose market share to Conagra?
Right.
So again, using social media, that's all they had to do. They could have used that same social media to push their already healthy specialty brand, that's in the specialty stores like Whole Foods, to push it mainstream to align with, I mean, you go to anybody's Facebook, they're juicing, they're doing whatever, and it's right there.
And again, this is why, I tell people, regardless of who I'm talking to, that if you put it out there, it's there. It's not going anywhere. You see all of these tools that you can revive the stuff on. So it is never gone. Once you say it, it's there. And someone can track it. I mean, this is why campaigns are so good at digging up dirt on each other, because they hire people who do this. The mayor of Chicago, Emanuel, started out as an opposition researcher, which explains a lot. So this is what they do. This is what companies do. They have people whose sole job is to go through this kind of stuff and find out what's happening. And as I said, I was alerted to this by an attorney. And he was saying, hey, you should check this out. And I thought it was just the coolest thing ever, because
Is there something quick and dirty that you can do with students that make them in or get them interested in putting these kinds of stuff in practice?
well, I think, what I try to do is just show the kind of work that I've done with it and how it helps you. If you are in journalism, it's very competitive, especially now with all of these other outlets that we now have, the Republicans and all of these different outlets now, Politicos, these newer things that have popped up now. How do you stay ahead of what everybody else is doing, right? There's nothing new under the sun. Most of what we do is the same. But how do you get ahead of it? And the way I do it is by, saying that, well, this is how you do that. You use these tools, you master these things, and you learn how to apply them to journalism. Because, most kids, honestly, know how to use it. They just don't know how to use it for this purpose. And that's what I try to get across to them is that, you need to learn how to use this. And a couple of other things here. It's for real, trust me. So DuckDuckGo is a search engine like Google, except it doesn't keep track of what you've searched. So when you search stuff like on Google, and then you come back again, it'll list all the stuff that you've searched. And even if you delete it, notice that if you're on your smartphone or your tablet, it says delete all stuff from this device. This device, it doesn't say delete the stuff from Google. So Google still knows what you searched. And they keep track of what you've searched. DuckDuckGo does not. And so if I'm searching for something that's sensitive and I really don't want anybody to know, I use DuckDuckGo. Because Bing also tracks stuff too. And DuckDuckGo is a bare bones search engine, but it's as good as Google. The other one is Hide My Ass. Okay. So what this does is it basically removes your tracks on the web and allows you to search. And I'll show you why that's a good idea. Everybody's familiar with the U.S. Postal Service, right? Post office, stick something in the mail, and a couple of days later it arrives, most times. They're pretty efficient. There's also a law enforcement part of the U.S. Postal Service called the Postal Inspection Service. And they have a surveillance program called mail covers that go back to like Ben Franklin. So at the request of the FBI or DEA or someone, they will monitor your mail to see who you're communicating. This is called mail cover. And so I wrote this story about this kid here up in Buffalo who picked up his mail one day and he noticed that this card was in his mail. Most likely it was accidental, but it said, hey, for this guy, this is a mail watch, so copy all of his mail and stuff before you give it to the supervisor. And they stuck it in his mail and gave it to him. Probably not a good idea. But,
Like open history or the envelopes?
what's that?
Both recording who?
Everything.
And open?
No,
but
no. You need a warrant to open it, except if it comes from abroad, then they don't need a warrant to open it.
And they don't need a warrant to monitor.
No. And that's the concern, is that the decision is made by the Postal Inspection Service, not the judge. So they don't need a warrant to monitor that. So they monitored him. With this, and this is something that you see these documents here. I've annotated them so you can, I can point out specific stuff to people in these documents. This thing is called Document Cloud. It's actually created. One of the co-founders of this is a guy named Aaron Poolhofer, who is at the New York Times. And what this document does, it lets you share and collaborate on documents, but it also lets you annotate documents. So, and then you can search the annotations. So it is reporting in a sense that it allows you to do stuff without trying to stick everything into a story. I've known Aaron actually since we were 14 years old. We went to private high schools in Minnesota and ended up at the Times. But so I use all of these different, I use this thing to just go through documents, and then you can point out in these documents, like you can annotate stuff to point out to people what they should. But you can also search the annotations too, which is typically stuff that you can't do if you like annotate an Adobe document or PDF. You can't search the annotations, but with this you actually can. And so collaborative stuff is taking on more because we have all of these documents, and in the past we would just write about the documents. And then we would refer to the documents, but then you would never see them. So this is just another way of journalism that you can take these documents now, utilize them in a different form, and even tell a story basically of what the documents actually mean.
And this one is called?
Document Cloud.
Cloud.
Yes. It's one word, Document Cloud. It's run by the University of Missouri Investigative Reporters and Editors. You have to get a subscription. You have to be a news organization, but your journalism school, so you can get a subscription to it. I say subscription. It's not a subscription. You can they'll set up an account, and you can actually share the documents publicly, or you can keep them internally. And then the last thing I'll share with you, and then I'll sit down and shut up and he said. Oh, two other things we're talking about. I always, whenever I go to a new beat, the first things I learn are how are things reported, who collects what, and who then they report this stuff to. So a few years ago, I did a story about bed rails. Everybody's bed rails now. But it turned out that over about a 15-year period, about 500 elderly people have been killed by bed rails. Either they have like dementia or something, they try to get out of the bed and they will slide under the things and get their necks caught there and strangle to death. And so this woman, her mother was one of the people who died from this. But there's this thing that the FDA has on their website that's called MAUD. And it's not B. Arthur, MAUD. MAUD is like this medical device that's online that, most people never even think about. So I just went through there, looked at it, and then matched it against lawsuits and things like that. But the key point here is that there are a ton of things on the web now that students on a particular beat should know how to access and what's available. Yes?
Oh, there's one that I can show you. You want to show me the web service Rivers website?
You can show that. I mean, wrap up and then you can show that. So there's tons of stuff like that you can that I point them to. One of the last things here is if I can get to it. Oh, here we go. Oh, there it is. Freedom of information, which I cannot overemphasize that they should be using FOIA, state, federal. And the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press actually has a FOIA letter generator, so you don't even need to know how to necessarily craft one. You just fill out the information, and then you click a button, and it puts in, the U.S. section, whatever. You can even pick out the address for the agency. So you don't even need to know that the FDA, where it's located or anything. It automatically will do that if you just click on the agency there. FOIA is a great tool, but it should be used as a last resort because it takes so long, and then sometimes you have to sue to get stuff. Yep. And I'll show you a thing that we did back in 2010 that actually we ended up, it took us 3 years and a lawsuit to get the information that we wanted. But we sued the Treasury Department because we were, this thing is closed. Okay. We sued the Treasury Department. There's this office called, we have sanctions against Iran, right? So you can't do any business with Iran. If you do, you're subject to thousands of dollars in fines, except when you're not. The Iran Sanctions Act, at the time that we did this story, the Iran Sanctions Act had never been enforced. Bill Clinton signed it in 1994. We did the story in 2010. The act had never been enforced. And it turns out there's an office within the Treasury Department called OFAC, Office of Foreign Asset Control, that will give you license to operate in places that we have sanctions against. So there is stuff that can happen in Cuba because people can get a license for it. There's stuff that and there are sanctions against countries, and then there's sanctions against like individuals. Like there are sanctions against Mugabe himself. There's parts of Zimbabwe that we can help, but Mugabe himself, there are sanctions against him. So we wanted to know who had the license. to operate it. And they told us it was private, that we couldn't get it, and we said, no, that's not correct, 'cause the law doesn't say that. So then we filed a FOIA request for, and hopefully I can bring this up, because I think this is funny. We filed a FOIA request for the documents, and they sent us something, but I'll show you what they sent to us. And what they sent to us, oh, it's going to be 200 pages. Oh, so basically what they sent to us was a blacked out spreadsheet. So we sued them, and it took 3 years, but we ended up getting it, and then we got the license. But then we also, which brings me to my last point about sometimes the data just isn't there. You have to create it yourself. And so Joe Becker and I created this database of all the companies that we could publicly identify that were operating in Iran. This had never been done, and it took us 6 months to do it. We went through SEC filings, we went through lawsuits, we went through pension plans, we went through company websites, because Toyota, and we own a Toyota, but Toyota swears up and down that they were not operating in Iran. The PR lady called me and basically cursed me out, saying that we defamed them, they're not operating in Iran. But on their website, they have an address that says Toyota, Tehran, in Iran. There's a number.
Wasn't Tehran.
So there was a number, so I called the number. Someone answered Toyota Tehran. So I'm thinking, well, silly me. I thought that it was something. So, she goes into this whole thing, and I said, you guys saw Philadelphia, Denzel Washington? I remember he kept saying,
Explain to me like
explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old, right? So I basically said to her, okay, explain this to me like I'm a 4-year-old, right? How does a car go from being manufactured by Toyota to being in Iran? How does that happen? Can you walk me through that process? Is this a donation? You guys just donate this stuff. Is this like humanitarian? We just donate a camera to someone in Iran. And she goes, well, it's done by a third-party vendor. I said, but you guys do make money from this, right? And so finally, she just hung up, before she hung up the phone, she said they were going to do a point-by-point rebuttal of all the inaccuracies that the story was published March 10th, 2010. I'm still waiting for that point-by-point rebuttal of all the inaccuracies in the story. But what Joe and I did was we basically created a spreadsheet, and we eventually put it up online that people could actually go through and look at all the companies. We ended up with 74 companies. There were actually more, but there were 74 that we could specifically say were there or were still there. And we called every last one of them to get a response, just to make sure that we didn't get anything. And the only thing we got some pushback from Toyota, and there was a Korean company that was really worried that we were going to say that they were operating in Iran. They weren't worried about the U.S. They were worried about the Iranians knowing that they were doing work in the U.S. so that was their concern. But anyway, we ended up doing this database that had all of this information, including stuff that we didn't have in the story. We had people quoted in the database to explain what they were doing. Okay, so did you want to quickly show that?
Oh, yeah.
And then if you guys have additional questions or things like that, I'll be more than happy to answer them, or I can just shut up. So you
grab a sandwich,
One of the things that, Ron's stuff always does that I love is that you get to do investigative stuff and really, research-related things that give you time to work on. I was basically, my name is Lorraine, for those of you who don't remember Lorraine Brown. And a lot of my work was, obviously I didn't get to do the stuff Ron does, but breaking news and how to find information and sort of figure out where you're going as a reporter. And one of the things that was really useful to me is one of my sources showed me this was the National Weather Service's water.weather.gov. And it gives you predictions about where the rivers will change, how they will flood. Have you guys shown any of this to your students? Is this something you guys are familiar with? And it's loading.
What's it called?
Water.weather.gov. It's a part of the National Weather Service website. So basically, it helps you determine where rivers are going to flood, because a lot of times you need to tell readers, the river is flooding at this point, the river will, so we're going to go to my home state for this one because I use this one more frequently. Hold on a second here. Looks like I lost it here. Oops. Okay, I'm going to make that bigger, not smaller. Sorry. Well, honey, can you help me with this? I need to hold on, set the view. Now, let me just start it over, make it look at page.
While she's doing that, I do want to emphasize too that while it is true that I mainly do enterprise investigative stuff, a lot of those tools that I showed you were hardened for daily, quick turnaround things too. They're not just for things where you have 6 months to show you something. Or if you want to do like breaking news, because we have like the Elliot Spitzer thing, perfect example. New York Times. The researchers at the paper found the woman through social media stuff. And so we had that before anybody knew who she was. And she was even wondering how we identified her. But we have a MySpace page with songs that she recorded. Kind of,
MySpace.
They still have a MySpace.
well, I remember this a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
MySpace is still kind of hanging out.
Interesting.
Is it not working?
No, it's not working. Somehow I made this like way too small to see. And I don't quite know. And it's funny because we also have this, Ron and I have this Mac PC argument. So my beloved Mac has let me down. I think I squeezed it and made it too small, and I'm trying to figure out where the map is. But basically, if you go to this, you can click, and it will show you, and you'll see a color-coded little map on the side that talks about flooding. So it will tell you exactly when and where the river is going to flood. You'll see like a date progression. But if you go to the bottom of the page, it shows you the historic information about when the river flooded in the past. And the great thing as a reporter to use is the part that's below that. It'll tell you, when the river's at 38 feet, you'll have water up to the houses on Water Street. So as a reporter, you can either decide to go to Water Street, or you can do a search on the web and see what businesses and homes are on Water Street, and then go from there.
But you get the idea. I can't make it bigger, so I'm not, I don't know what to do there.
Hold on, let's just do another page.
Well, this, you can't see a whole lot of that in there, but this one sort of,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
try that?
oh yeah, for some reason. Well, we can't connect.
Yeah, but I was really just,
Well, can't you keep explaining a little bit more, and then I'll try to make it more obvious to the site. So,
I opened another page and it still didn't. It's still small. Is there like a minus or plus somewhere? Sorry.
yeah, okay. It's beyond my technical abilities.
But anyway, so this is something just to keep in mind if if you're helping people decide where they're going to go, what they'll have to look at. And I don't know why it's made the actual page has been made small. It's not the website, it's the computer, the way it's showing it for some reason. Honey, can I look at Safari on this? Oh, sure, that would be great. Hold on, let me. Okay, I just changed the browser. Hopefully this fits. And I don't do it again. But basically, if you go to the page, it'll be covered with different dots. And so you'll be able to see how many rivers there are across the country. And just sort of click on where it is you wish to. Where it is you wish to go, and then you don't end up there. But anyway, you see what I'm saying? Talking about the river gauges in the forecast. I'm putting on the forecast section now.
Because originally it was up there briefly.
Yeah, it was up there briefly, and now I've completely lost it. I haven't used it in a while.
And Jackie, just to get to your point, the way I teach a class at Howard University and I teach a class at Wits University in Johannesburg, and one of the things I have the students do is sort of have them find things and basically test them to find out. Like I had them do something once about who was the richest member of the Congressional Black Caucus. Anybody know off the top of your head?
Yeah, not sure.
Right? Nope. You know? No? Jackie?
Not California, not Maxine Waters.
Nope. No. Anybody? Nobody? Al Green? In Texas? Al Green? Not that Al Green.
We'll stay together. We'll stay together.
Talk about Reverend Al.
So Al Green, and they wanted to know, well, how do I know that? Well, if you go to opensecrets.org, it not only opensecrets.org, it not only has, who gave people money and lobbying and stuff like that, it also has their financial disclosure forms on there. So I can tell you where Maxine Water banks. I can tell you, I can't tell you how much is in there, but I can tell you, which is how people found out that when she was trying to steer stimulus money towards a bank that her husband, she didn't have him listed on, which is why the ethics disclosure. But, so I have them do stuff like that. I'll ask a question and say, well, how would you find this? And then lead them through the process. But the idea is not so much to just tell them, but to think about where would you get the information. And I always tell people, don't think about the information itself, but who would have it. And then how would you get that information? And then you always assume that the information is open and free. Now, that's not always the case, but you should always assume that. Other questions? Is it still loaded?
I have a question.
Yes.
Something it's still going. I mean, it's just because it's a story I'm working on. Are we posting this or something? Are we posting this?
Is it still recording? Is that what you're asking? Is it still recording?
It's still rolling, yeah.
She doesn't want it rolling, obviously.
Yeah.
Well,
We can maybe
when
just
he
cut out,
comes
just
down.
because it's like something I'm working on now. But so I I work mostly as a freelancer, so I'm not a beat reporter, and it seems